We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Paring Down. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all of the things this week. If you are listening, I am so grateful you're here, even during a very busy week for all of us. Sometimes it's nice to come back and have a little normalcy during the holiday season. So if you are a regular listener that listens on Tuesdays and have decided to listen again this Tuesday, I'm really happy to provide that little bit of regularity in an otherwise kind of nutty week, but hopefully a good week if you're celebrating. And one of the reasons I actually wanted to have the conversation that's going to happen here on Paring Down today is because during the holidays, more than ever, I feel like is when we are bombarded with so much messaging about our health. And as with any industry, they're trying to sell us stuff. So it can be a catalyst for clutter, even if our intentions are really good and we're just looking for ways to feel healthier and live a better, more energized life. That's why I wanted to bring on someone who really knows what they're talking about when it comes to the health industry as a whole. Now, before I tell you what she does, I want to read a definition because our guest, Andrea Nakayama, specializes in functional medicine. And functional medicine kind of gets a bad rap. So I want to make sure that you know that I am not here, and neither is she, to push any anti-traditional medicine messaging. Like we both believe in making sure that everyone's needs are met when it comes to chronic illness and otherwise. But the reason functional medicine gets a bad rap is because it can be a terminology that's really misused in order to sell high-cost supplements and unproven therapies, and even runs the risk of blaming patients for serious illnesses. So I want to read a definition of what functional medicine actually is, which is a patient-centered approach that seeks to identify and address the root causes of disease, looking at the whole person, so genetics, environment, and lifestyle, rather than just symptoms, using personalized plans involving nutrition, supplements, stress management, and other therapies to promote long-term health. So traditional medicine tends to look at the symptoms, which matter, right? Because if you have a symptom that is bothering you, let's get that fixed. Functional medicine, when done correctly, looks at that and says, yes, that is good. Let's talk to a practitioner. And also, what could be causing this symptom to begin with, right? And that makes a lot of sense to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. And that's why Andrea is such a fantastic voice for this conversation, because when we pare down what we actually need in our lives in order to be healthy and feel our best, we're not dealing with the overwhelming clutter of information, the physical clutter, right, in the form of devices or supplements or routines that we're told we need to do by all these competing voices on the internet. And I think that you're going to find this conversation to be really empowering, insightful, and reasonable because, like I said, she really believes in combining traditional medicine with functional medicine. All right, now a bit more about Andrea Nakayama. She's the founder of Functional Nutrition Alliance, which is an organization that offers in-depth functional nutrition training for health providers of all levels. Over the last 15 years, she has trained over 7,000 practitioners in more than 65 countries and is the winner of the 2015 National Association of Nutrition Professionals Impact Award and the 2016 National Association of Nutrition Professionals Service Award for her leadership in the field of nutrition. She's also the author of Field Guide to Functional Nutrition and is a co-producer of the Hashimoto's Institute Summit and Practitioner Training Program. She's been featured in Martha Stewart Living, the Oprah Magazine, and more. She is warm and she is intelligent, and I think you're going to love her, and I think you're going to really appreciate this conversation. So let's welcome Andrea Nakayama to the Paring Down podcast. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us on Paring Down today. I'm really stoked about this conversation.
I am too, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Recently I had my friend who's actually a former Miss America on, and we talked about how the beauty industry can really fuel overconsumption. And I think the health industry can
Hmm.
be just as detrimental at times. So I know your wisdom is going to be really interesting today. But first, would you tell everyone just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm Andrea Nakayama. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist and educator. I'm also a practitioner of narrative medicine. I've been in the industry for a long time, and I train both practitioners and patients to have a deeper awareness of what's going on so they can focus their attention and pare down on all that noise that's happening in health.
I mean, what a gift you are, because there are so many loud voices, especially with social
Yes.
media these days.
Yes.
And I'm like, what actually I'm sure some of this is helpful, but I don't know how to weed through it all. So that's what we're going to do today. That's really, really great. But before we get into the nitty gritty, would you share with everyone kind of where this passion for personalized medicine came from? I know that you had a tragedy in your life. So if you would take us back to that time, what did you do? How did it lead you to deciding to go into nutrition full time?
Yes. So I had a completely different career. And in April of 2000, my late husband, Isamu, was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. So I was 7 weeks pregnant when he was diagnosed. He was given 6 months to live. So we can do the math. He wasn't expected to see our son born. That really spurred an interest I already had in what I would now maybe call food as medicine, where we look at dietary and lifestyle factors, because we had to do everything and anything. Yes, he was going through craniotomy, so having brain surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, but we wanted to do everything else to try to preserve his life, extend his life, and let him be here to become the father that he really wanted to be. So he actually died 2.5 years after his diagnosis, when our son was 19 months old. This is a long time ago. That son is now 24. He lives in Tokyo. This is a long time ago, but continues to be really the inspiration for all the work I do today, and for helping people find that yes and in their health and medical care.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that
Yes.
story. I mean, I'm sure it's something that in your line of work you talk about a lot, but I can imagine that. I mean, I lost my mom when I was 24, which was horrible. I think losing a spouse, especially with a young child, is a different level of
Yes.
unnatural and
Yes.
painful. And I know that no matter how often I talk about my mom when it comes to decluttering sentimental items, like it's never entirely easy, right? Like that, it's always a little tough. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that with us so that we can
Yes.
understand better, like your heart here. And before I have your next question, I want to tell everyone as we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that chronic illness can be a hot button topic. I'm sure you experience that and feel that. And I think a lot of people want to assign blame to different types of things. And just so all of you listening know, that is not the angle we are coming at today. Rather, I just want this conversation to feel like an encouragement to better understand yourself, better understand your body, and how to pare down our health journeys so that we're not overrunning our homes or even our minds with these quick fixes. So that's where Andrea and I are coming from today. I just don't want anyone
Absolutely.
to feel like, oh, is this going to get into spooky territory? It's not going
Right.
to.
No, not at all.
Yes. So, on that note, Andrea, can you just give a big picture of what the state of chronic illness looks like, especially in the United States?
Yeah, it's so high. So we're looking at nearly 195 million people who are suffering with one or more chronic illnesses, mental health issues included. That's 6 out of 10 adults, and there's more and more children. And unfortunately, to the point that we're talking about, Shannon, there's more and more information available to us, and yet more and more people are getting sick. So there's a disconnect between what we're actually doing and seeking and striving for, and what is actually happening to us as a people. There's so many reasons. As you said, it's what in functional medicine we call multifactorial. We can't assign blame to any one thing. There are roots that I like to look at, but even within those roots, it's very, very different what lends itself to ultimately that tipping point that becomes a chronic health concern. And when we talk about a chronic health concern, I just want to say for anybody who's sick and not getting better. So an acute situation is when we can go to the doctor for a broken arm or something that needs a surgery to be fixed. And our medical system is very, very good and advancing very quickly at acute care. The gap in healthcare is when we look at what we can do to support people with chronic health conditions. Again, sick and not getting better.
That is a good distinction. As you were talking and saying that there's more and more chronic illness happening, I think so many of us can feel that. We see that in our own lives with whether it's ourselves or relatives or that kind of thing. I also have always wondered, though, how much do you think is just heightened diagnoses? Like, it's not necessarily that there's this percentage of increase in chronic illness. It's just that they're getting diagnosed more often. Do you think that comes into play?
Yes, that's such a good point. We're not only diagnosing more broadly and understanding diagnostic factors, we're also assigning diagnoses to things that aren't diagnosable. So let's just say, or not pathologized, I should say, like perimenopause. That's not a diagnosis. That's a period in life. But if we look at the perimenopause, menopause industrial complex today, that's selling us something to fix this stage in life. That's pathologizing something that isn't a pathology. The signs and symptoms may be associated with perimenopause. They may be associated with other things that are happening at the same time as perimenopause, but we are overdiagnosing. We are expanding our diagnostic ability, but we are also over pathologizing things that aren't necessarily pathological.
Interesting. And what I appreciate about you too is that I know in your work, despite that being true, it doesn't take away those symptoms, like the legitimacy of needing to do something about
Absolutely.
it, right? Like women who are perimenopausal or whatever you might be going through that is being given a more formal diagnosis when it's really not, what's the word?
Pathologized. It's a pathology, yeah.
Yes, a pathology, right? Like that still matters.
Yes,
and,
1000%.
But like you said, it can be a little bit of a slippery slope when it comes to consumption and figuring out what is just being sold to us because it can be lucrative for the sellers as well. But we're going to get into that. You already did a good job, I think, touching on this, but would you explain maybe in more concrete terms what exactly functional medicine is?
Yes, and I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, but I'm going to talk about what a truly functional practice is because it too has been commodified and there are a lot more things today that are called functional medicine that have kind of gotten away from the founding principles. So there are 3 tenets of a truly functional practice. Number 1, a therapeutic partnership. That means, Shannon, that if I'm a provider and you are my client or patient, we are both experts in the room. And I am coming with my expertise as a functional medicine nutritionist, but you are coming with expertise in something I will never have expertise in, and that expertise is you. And so in a therapeutic partnership, I'm making room for both of those things to be true. My expertise and your expertise. I am not the God, I am the guide, and that's tenet number 1. Tenet number 2 is that we look for the root causes. And I want to underscore the S there because I think today we're being sold a lot of find the root cause, fix the root cause as a singular. Again, going back to that word I introduced earlier, multifactorial, when we take a broader perspective, we actually have better health outcomes. And I have models that I teach into that help us understand the difference between what I call a root, the soil, and the branch, right? Our signs and symptoms are branches. So looking for the root causes helps us to ask, why is this happening? Not just what do I do about it? And we live in a what do I do about it? Consume, consume, consume culture. The third tenet is that this is all based on systems biology. And systems biology just helps us understand that everything is connected. So today, a lot of us know the gut is connected to the brain, but also our hormones are connected to the liver, which is how we detoxify, which is connected to the gut. Our immune systems are connected to the gut. Everything in the body is connected. And our medical industry, and I'm not here to disparage it at all, but breaks us up into ologies We see different ologists for different things. And in functional medicine, we understand it's all connected. If you're having constipation and migraines, those two things aren't different. They are connected to me, and I'm understanding those connections. So again, therapeutic partnership, looking for those roots, which means I ask, why is this happening? Not just what do I do about it? And a systems-based approach, which is based on systems biology, which helps me understand that everything in the body, everything about you is connected and part of what I'm considering.
Ooh, I love that so much. Actually was just talking to my husband about that this week because I'm not normally someone who has back pain, and I had the worst back pain. Like I could barely move for 3 days.
No.
And we were talking about like what could have caused it. And then it was like, well, a lot of things probably factored into it, right? Like I had one of the highest good stress, like I was making a really exciting career decision, but really high pressure week for work. And then also like I haven't been working out like I need to be. And there's just a lot of different things. The kids were waking up in the middle of the night. Like there's so many things, whether it's psychological or physical or nutrition wise, that I'm sure played into the fact that my back was just like, gotcha, not doing well.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a whole matrix of things instead of just one thing. And this goes back to your point about assigning blame. And when we take a step back and you go, wait a minute, all these things are going on, that helps us take a different approach than what do I take for my back pain?
Right. Now, my next question probably has an obvious answer, but I feel like it needs to be said. So, why do you think so many of us fall for the promise of quick fixes when it comes to our health?
Yeah, it's so seductive. It's so seductive to think that we can just like fix something. The one thing I just want to remind us all is that we are not broken. We would not be listening right now. Like we are more functional. More of us works than doesn't. Or else we're in a situation where we're being cared for in a completely different way. If we're here, we're listening, we are working more than we are not. And it's often just little tweaks and things. But we take this approach that we're broken. We need a fix. We need a quick fix because I need to deal with it right now. And that becomes really, really seductive. And we're sold more and more and more quick fixes or roads that will get us to the quick fix, like over testing, over, like we talked about, diagnosing or pathologizing and then doing this diet or those supplements or whatever it may be to get to the solution.
What an encouraging take, because obviously there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel better.
No.
Right? Like I don't want to have a back pain.
Yes.
But to say we're functioning more than we're not, I think that's really powerful. I have a close friend who's she's disabled, and something that she shares with me often, and she'll share on the internet too, is a frustration she feels in the disabled community of people feeling like they should want to be fixed or they need to be fixed and they feel bad for them. And she's like, I'm functional.
Exactly.
Like I am functioning well,
Yes.
you know? And it's actually so ableist to identify anything, quote, wrong with our bodies as not being functional. There can be things we want to work on to better our quality of life. But wow, what an encouraging way of saying that. And it just reminds me of my friend there.
Such a good example, Shannon. And I think that's true of neurodivergence too. You know, there are people in the communities, in the neurodivergent communities that are saying like, I'm great with how my brain works. It's different, but it's good. But then from an ableist or, you know, neurotypical perspective, we want to fix the thing that we see as wrong, whether it's in ourselves or others. And I think that what you're saying there is really brilliant, that we can see, wait a minute, I'm good. Like this is good. This is good. And yeah, I'd like to work on that. That's bothering me, or that's not feeling good. Or like we've been saying, signs and symptoms are bothersome and we want to address them. And I also just want to say for people who are like truly suffering, which is my passion place, there is more to focus on. But even with those populations, and I've seen thousands of people in this arena, they are more functional than they're not. Even when it's chronic and it's relentless and it's not getting better, there's more working than not.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I bring up a pendulum. I feel like every 4 episodes on my podcast because it applies to so much. But there's this pendulum swing of, hey guys, it's time for your ad break. Each week I like to say a huge thank you for your graciousness that these are part of the podcast. Here we go. You guys know the reason I love living in Alaska is because of how much we can get outside. But did you know that Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors? That's wild. And did you know that indoor air can be up to 100 times more polluted than outdoor air? The air gets stale. We have chemicals from when we're cooking. There might be contaminants like allergens, viruses, smoke, gases, mold spores, all of that. And my husband's sneezing fits have completely stopped. I'm not even kidding. I'm not making this up just to try and sell you something, but they have actually stopped since we started using our air doctor. This is an award-winning air purifier that eliminates 99.99% of all those dangerous contaminants I just named. I know a lot of my friends are looking into getting air purifiers, and it's always hard to make a choice as to which one. So I want you to know that Air Doctor was voted best air purifier by Newsweek. So it's really no surprise that 98% of Air Doctor customers agree that their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code PAIRING, PARING. Remember, there's no I in pair, to get up to $300 off today. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, plus a 3-year warranty, an $84 value, free. So get this exclusive podcast-only offer now at airdoctorpro.com, airdoctorpro.com, and use promo code PAIRING, PARING.
There was more working than not.
It's interesting. There's this pendulum swing of either you feel like with let's say neurodivergency, you want to fix it in yourself and someone else. And it's like this fix it mentality, which is just really aggressive, or it's my superpower. And then there's some people are like, well, it does make my life harder. It's not, I wouldn't get to call it a superpower. Maybe some people feel that way, that it is a superpower, but that doesn't mean everybody is. And there's this pendulum swing. Either you accept it and you love it and it's the most glorious thing about you, or it is the thing that needs to be fixed. And it's like, well, let's land somewhere probably in the middle is where most people feel, which is, I'm going to accept this part of me. I'm going to find ways to make myself function better, and it doesn't have to be my entire identity.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Good pendulum.
Yes. So, you mentioned your late husband, but you also have had some personal health challenges that shaped your philosophy around minimalism and health. I know Hashimoto's, there was even solo parenting. Can you share about both of those experiences?
Yeah, well, solo parenting, I have to just say how lucky I was. If I had to be a solo parent to a single child, I got the right kid to do that with. And, I think I became mother and father. I did take on a lot. I don't know that he lives with a feeling of loss. I just recently, as I'm looking at longevity and the difference in parenting when you're parenting an adult, which isn't much parenting, you're kind of on the sidelines, which is a huge role shift that kind of woke me up in a whole way. But just recognizing that the loss that we experienced is more a loss for me and not a loss for him. And so I think that when we are parenting, solo parenting, whatever we're doing, just recognizing that the experiences are different and not to assign any story to the other person, the other people in our lives. Our story is our story, and stop and listen for the story that is truly theirs. So that's just a little sidebar as I go through my own kind of longevity equation and recognize, roles are shifting, including this one that I've held for a really long time and held for 2. So that holding for 2 really leads me to answering your question, because I took on a lot, and I tend to take on a lot. I've taken on a lot in my business and the growth of my business and being a leader in my field and in the community and as a parent. And all of that is very typical of those of us who have autoimmune conditions. We tend to be strivers and overachievers, and autoimmunity is on the rise, one of those chronic condition labels that's on the rise. And most of the people who have autoimmunity, not all, but about 75% are female. I have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis. So it's my thyroid that gets attacked by my own immune system, autoimmunity. And that experience really led me to understand the different ways we can do self-care, that it doesn't need to look like one thing. If we're saying, I have Hashimoto's, I have whatever it may be, MS or rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease, there's not one fix. There are different ways we can find the balance within our own body. And so that understanding of autoimmunity really expanded my understanding of, as I mentioned to you, the branches, the roots, and the soil. The diagnosis, the signs and symptoms are branches. They are expressions of what we're experiencing at a deeper level. They are not the problem to go fix.
And so as you managed that in your own life, how did you see trying to help yourself lead to any sort of maybe clutter? Might be physical clutter, might be clutter in terms of the information you're digesting. How did you experience that?
That's such a good question, because I think we go looking for that fix or that solve for that branch. So if I say I have Hashimoto's, I am then looking, what's the diet for Hashimoto's? What supplements should I take for my Hashimoto's? How should I be exercising for my Hashimoto's? And two people's Hashimoto's are two people's Hashimoto's. What's similar for us is that our own immune system has decided to attack our thyroid tissues. That's what's similar. But what got us there, and therefore what will reverse it, are going to be different. Are there some similarities? Yes. But when I buy into that Hashimoto experts, and I'm just using this as an example, we can insert sign, symptom, diagnosis, whatever it may be. But when I go looking for that person's solve, it is that person's solve, unless they're bringing me into the true individuality of me going step by step through understanding my body's needs. And that sounds really complicated, Shannon, but it doesn't have to be. We can get back to the broader realm where we can do self-care that is very inexpensive and not commodified.
Well, what would be some examples of inexpensive, non-commodified things that would help pretty much anyone?
Sleep. So my non-negotiable trifecta is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. And I'm going to even make that third one easy. But sleep is really critical. And from my perspective, where I understand that systems biology, sleep impacts the microbiome and our gut health. Sleep impacts our immune system health. Sleep impacts our hormonal health. We're seeing then all the ways in which we are actually not contributing or building on quicksand when we just buy, consume, stack all these things, but ignore the foundation that's truly going to help us. And I'm not talking about you have to take melatonin or progesterone or deal with sleep in some way that's external. First and foremost, what's your nighttime routine? What's your sleep pattern look like? What's happening in the middle of the night? Are you waking to go to the bathroom? Are you going to sleep at the same time every night? Are you waking feeling rested? So just taking a pause and going, wait a minute, I get a second wind at 11 o'clock when the kids are in bed, and I'm going to keep working because that's my chance, or connecting with my partner. That's not helping the signs and symptoms you're dealing with all day long.
Oh my gosh. When you were talking, it reminded me of this hilarious reel I saw just yesterday. And it's this mom in her car, and she's like, oh, I hate this for me and I hate this for all of you. But like, it really does just take doing little things better in our lives to feel better. Like, oh, like we got to go to sleep earlier. I hate that for me. I hate that for you. I hate that we actually have to put down our phone.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
Because these things are obvious. I think most of us know that better sleep, and that includes not looking at a screen before bed. All these things are good for us. But boy, isn't it easier to pop a supplement than it is to force yourself to stop the doom scroll or to take these kind of bigger, they're not even hard, but these like less, it's just, I guess, harder in some ways, these measures that are so natural.
Yes, so natural and so nourishing and fortifying. And it's not about being good or bad. I want to really take that language away from it. And it really is about putting ourselves first and our self-care first and doing the things that are going to help us between our medical visits, between the supplement taking, and figure out how do I support myself every day and be a model for the little people in my life, if there are little people, to do that for themselves.
Totally. And as you were talking, even just then, you mentioned that it can be a marriage between maybe some supplements and these broader things like sleep.
Absolutely.
So, how do we figure out which supplements, which pieces of advice are worth trying and taking, and which ones are just the noise? Because I think that's where we all get tripped up. We're like, oh, I guess I'll try everything. I don't know where to begin.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is part of what the challenges are, that we are actually doing things to our body when we put things in them, whether that's food or makeup or whatever, or the kind of water we're drinking or supplements. And I am pro supplement. I am pro testing. I'm a yes and to all of it. What I want to know is, what am I taking? And why? Am I taking that because an influencer who I like how they look told me to take that for some sign, symptom, or diagnosis I have? Or am I taking that because I have a deficiency or because I'm actually addressing something and got the appropriate help to do that? So one of the things I just want to recognize is that I often will have clients write a supplement tracker at the beginning of our time together. And what I want to know is, what are you taking? Where is it from? What's the dosing? Why are you taking it? Where'd you hear about it? And have you noticed any difference taking it? A lot of times, a lot of these supplements that we are taking may have different things in them that aren't necessarily working for us. Again, supplements are good when they are supplementing. And that is what we want to be doing, supplementing our lives with the things it needs in our bodies. We are ecological beings, and all of these things, food, supplements, lifestyle changes, they're all good as long as we need them, as long as my body needs that thing. So I talk about sleep. I take my magnesium every night. It's probably one of my foundational supplements that we all benefit from because we're very depleted in magnesium, largely because of our soil and the way we eat. So I'm pro magnesium supplements. It's not that I don't take them, but we need to think about what's working for our own body. There's not many nutrients that I can speak about that broadly that work for everybody.
So if someone does have a chronic illness, let's take Hashimoto's because that was your experience, and they want to learn more about how to feel better. And so they do find some influencers on social media who, with all good intent, are sharing things that have worked really well for them. How do they know? Do they need to go to their doctor and say, hey, should I be taking this? But maybe doctors have different opinions. Like, how do you weed through what, because you want to inform yourself, you want to learn more. So how do you know what to do?
Yeah, so I'm going to take this into that time. One of the gaps that I recognized in medicine is between our doctor's visits, right? We can't rely on our doctors for everything. A lot of people want their doctor to tell them how to eat, but doctors aren't trained in nutrition. They don't go to school for nutrition. Maybe if they're lucky, they get 17 hours of nutrition training in their tens of thousands of hours. So our doctors aren't going to know much about diet. We don't ask them what toilet paper to get or what sunscreen to use. We have to recognize scope, right? So what is my doctor's scope and what am I working on with my doctor and where do I need other help? So I agree with you to that point that there's a lot of time between our doctor's visits that we can be doing self-care. Now, how we do self-care, I think, can be much simpler than what we are doing because we are in that striving for all the fixes or all of what's right. So I want to bring it back to sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. And then understanding with your doctor, I call those the non-negotiables. That's tier 1 work. And when I say blood sugar balance, just as an aside before I get to tier 2, blood sugar balance, fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack. I'm not saying wear a continuous glucose monitor, start measuring what's going on. I'm just saying fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack, and see how you feel through the day. Are you having dips? And that might be where you need more help. So again, tuning into the self as a way to learn more about what's needed next, as opposed to outsourcing it. So tier 1, non-negotiables. My non-negotiable trifecta is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance for you.
Wait, I'm going to stop you real fast. What's the poop aspect here?
The
is that
poop
just having
is,
a fiber?
Yes, the fiber is definitely going to help. So fat, fiber, protein at every meal. I also like to say eat the rainbow. So lots of fiber comes from our plant-based foods, and we will be bringing that in. We also get lots of antioxidants and nutrients from our plant-based foods. So we feed the fiber equation and also bring in more of those nutrients through our food. So those things are true. So poop is just, are you pooping? What's the quality of your poop? Do you notice any difference based on what you eat in your poop? If you put flax seeds in your oatmeal in the morning, is it different than when you don't put flax seeds in your oatmeal every morning? Just experiment, play. It doesn't need to be so complicated. Tier 2 for me is what I call deficiency to sufficiency. And this is where your doctor comes in. If your doctor's saying your vitamin D levels are low, I'm worried about these immune markers, then that is what we are focused on. We're not focused on Hashimoto's. We're focused on restoring the environment that is leading to the Hashimoto's signs, symptoms, and diagnosis. So again, learn from what's coming up with your doctor on your labs and see what needs support there. But I also just want to say, in relation to tier 1 and tier 2, I said non-negotiables. My non-negotiables for you are fat, fiber, protein. Shannon, you have non-negotiables for yourself. And I want to know those too. Is your non-negotiable reading a book or feeling like your space is clear and not cluttered? And when it's cluttered, your nervous system is riled up and that's contributing to your stress. That becomes part of my recipe, so to speak, of what your non-negotiables are and where that therapeutic partnership comes in. When I talk about tier 2, deficiency to sufficiency. So tier 1, non-negotiables, mine and yours. Tier 2, deficiency to sufficiency. Yes, I might be looking at nutrient levels or secretion levels or immune factors, but I also want to know you're not getting enough time with your partner. There's a deficiency there. And you guys, like, let's talk about a date night, or where's the joy in your life? Are you having time to do the things that have always brought you a sense of fulfillment and joy while you're managing all the things you are at this stage of your life with all you're doing? And so those become part of the non-negotiables too. And we don't realize how much those things actually impact our health.
Another quick word from our amazing sponsors who compensate me for the work I do on this podcast to bring you each episode completely for free. Thank you to you and them for supporting this show. Here we go.
We don't realize how much those things actually impact our health. I go to a dance class 4 days a week. I am so happy to be in that room with 50 other people of all shapes and sizes, shaking their booties. It's an hour every day that I'm taking it where I don't have to decide what to do. I'm not the boss. Somebody's telling me the moves. I'm just moving my body. I am so happy to be in that room, moving my body to the music. That is medicine too. So I just want to say, even though I'm thinking through non-negotiables, deficiency to sufficiency, tier 1, tier 2, I'm thinking of it broadly, and I invite everybody to say, where's their deficiency in my life? Stuff that I know moves me and makes me happy. Tier 3, by the way, is dismantling the dysfunction. That's where medicine lives. And we are often looking to jump to tier 3 with our supplements, with the things that we're consuming. We're trying to dismantle, fix. We have a whole other way to get to that same end goal that allows us to live life more fully and feed ourselves the things we need to survive, thrive, all of it.
That phrase, deficiency to sufficiency, is going to stick with me because it's so good. You might be deficient in progesterone or estrogen, like that. Yeah. There could be that. Yes. And you might be deficient in friendships.
Yes, exactly.
And right, we know the research that supports that isolation is as bad for you as 15 cigarettes a day. Is it something like that?
Yeah, and with longevity, like 7.5 years added to life with relationships and connection and belonging.
Yeah, and I think on social media and media in general, it's so much easier and more clear cut to be like, okay, you're low on vitamin B.
Right.
Let's fix that. It's easier to take a supplement for vitamin B than it is to make friends, to go out and say yes, and to do the hard thing when you don't feel like doing it, because that builds your community. You know, there's that phrase that goes around that everyone wants the village and no one wants to be the village. And I think some of that is true. As someone who, I like to be alone a lot.
Yes,
like
me too.
Oh, I love my alone time. I have to force myself to go be social.
I think that community can look all different ways. So, you know, as a single mom and a widow at such a young age, I definitely felt other. I definitely felt like I was kind of thrown off the course of the standard life that I had entered on, right? So I could feel that, but I noticed that the hardest days for me weren't when I cried or grieved. The hardest days for me were when I felt really disconnected from everything else that was happening around me in the preschool and the kindergarten. And so my mantra to myself was opt in, and not opt in like we do now to a newsletter or to get something online, but opt into what is happening around me. Is there a place I can volunteer? Is there a place where I can show up and be a part of the community instead of feeling other in the community? And I want to say I'm on the edge of extrovert and introvert, and work takes up all my extroversion. So then I'm like totally introvert. But when I show up at dance class, you know, I used to go and just get my little dot where you stand and show up. I showed up for months and didn't really, you know, just started to smile at people. And slowly but surely, you start to make some friends. And even if I'm not hanging out with them afterwards, we kind of know each other. We might give each other a hug when we see each other. There is one person I do go out with coffee after class on Saturday morning. So, you know, even if we're not going to an event or a party, which I also would find difficult, it's showing up for the things that are meaningful to us and showing up consistently. Even connection and community is going to come from that. And recognize it may not be a new friend. It may be an old friend. It may be connecting with your college friends and just making sure you have the connection, and also that connection with our partner, if we have one, with our children. Making sure that we are fed through connection is such a healing solve.
Totally. Well, before we get too close to the end of our conversation, something I really wanted to ask you about, because I think that it is an excellent example of how our health can turn into clutter, is electronics, wearables. We're tracking different things on our bodies. How do you help people tune back into their own body's signals, especially when they have outsourced that awareness to technology?
Oh, I love that you used the word outsourced. And I have a whole article on my personal website. It's actually a 2-part article. And those are longer articles, but they're good and deep on how you can't hack your health. So I want to separate the tools of optimization with the tools of stabilization. And I'm going to say what I mean by that. If you are a biohacker and you are in optimal health and you're looking to improve a thing or two, those tools and trackers are helpful for you to get some feedback, some biofeedback, and actually know like, oh, I need to change this a little bit. But if we're looking for stabilization, meaning our bodies don't feel great at this moment, and we're looking at that outsourced information, that information can be really confusing at best and overwhelming, like clutter can be at worst, where we are tuning and tracking all the time and we become obsessed with what that data says and whether we're doing life right or wrong or health right or wrong. So I just want to say, if people are doing that, like, tune it out. If you need to tune into it once or twice a day just to get a little gut check, fine. I wear an Oura ring. I look at my sleep score in the morning, but I don't fixate on it as whether I'm good or bad or how I actually feel that day. And this is back in the day, the only tool we really had like this was the scale. And people would be like, oh, I feel good in my body, but I got on the scale and it told me something I don't want to see. So now I feel bad in my body. And that same modality is what's happening to us with all of these trackers. So I just want to say, when you are investing in a tracker, why are you investing in it? And what information are you hoping to get from it? The best biofeedback we have is tuning into ourselves and maybe tracking what I eat for breakfast this morning. Did I have energy till lunch? What else happened in my day? That's the best biofeedback we can get, is tuning back insourcing versus outsourcing, not farming out everything to all of these tools and trackers that are overwhelming us, confusing us, and end up sitting somewhere in the house not even being used.
Right. Gosh. And it's just such sound advice. And it's a good example with the scale, because like we can feel fine. And then if a tracker tells us something that is wrong, whether you think a certain number isn't what you want to see or whatever, then suddenly you don't feel good about yourself. And that is the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. But on the flip side, there are people who feel like trackers, maybe I would imagine this is more the case for kind of type A people, but they like to see that achievement. I've achieved the 10,000 steps. And it's not even, necessarily that 10,000 steps guarantees you health. It's more so that, like, great, if that's what gets you moving, that's excellent.
Yes.
And so I think of course there are benefits, but it also is dependent on your personality. You don't have to have a tracker in order to be healthy. I don't.
Exactly. And even like breaking it down, like you just said, like, I'm going to track my steps. I want to get in more steps. I want to move more. I'm going to track my steps, right? But we tend to be looking at all of these things. I'm going to look at my steps. I'm going to look at my sleep. I'm going to track my food. We're going to do all of these things. And then inevitably we're telling ourselves that we're bad or good. And we have to walk this very narrow line in order to be good. And then we fall off and we're bad. And we keep this kind of story and narrative going for ourselves that isn't actually conducive to long-term health.
Do you find that people tend to have this information? Let's say they see that their cortisol has spiked, or I don't know if that's even something you can track on a tracker, but let's say you see your heart rate has spiked or your steps have been low or something. Do you find that people actually let that affect their lives, or they just let it stress them out more? Like, oh my gosh, my heart rate was crazy, or I didn't sleep well. Well, does that actually motivate them to change something in their sleep routine to sleep better? Or do you find that people just kind of know this information, but then don't do anything with it?
Well, I think this goes back to this notion of kind of over pathologizing. So there is research that comes out of Harvard University. Ellen Langer wrote the book, The Mindful Body. And sometimes we tell ourselves these stories that actually lead to more problems than less problems. So we might see our cortisol is high, which we can't see on a daily basis, but we can do a test that tells us our cortisol rhythm. And then we adopt a story about ourselves. I have depleted cortisol. I have elevated cortisol. My blood sugar is this or that. And we then live into that story of that pathology more often than if we didn't have that information. So if we're working on something specific, like I know I'm going through a stressful time right now at work, and I can see that in my heart rate variability. So that can be then something I work on and say, oh, I really have to tend to the 10 minutes of meditation every morning that I'm doing. I don't need another app. I don't need another thing. Like, I have YouTube and can do a guided meditation and sit with my eyes closed. Like, it doesn't need to be another purchase. And I'm working on addressing the fact that I'm going through a lot of stress. The stress in the day isn't going to change, but I'm going to set myself up with just a 10-minute fortification to manage myself better because I got that feedback. But that's one thing. I'm not doing all the things and then taking it on as I'm stressed and therefore I'm going to get sick and this isn't going to work and this is how it's going to be and it's going to impact. Like, I'm noticing. I can tell when my nervous system is ratcheted up, and I can tune in again in source and go, okay, phew, I need to walk around the block. I need to take a deep breath. I need to call my boyfriend. I need to go have a cup of tea, listen to a podcast. The things, again, going back to the non-negotiables, I know are mine for restoring balance. And they're just a little countermeasure, but I didn't have to buy it.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of my PMDD, and I have found that having a diagnosis of PMDD has been really helpful because it makes me feel less like I'm just a loony bin, right? I'm like, okay, there's something actually happening in my body.
Yes.
My body's actually responding to hormonal fluctuations. Yes. I'm not just losing my mind. Yes. And I cannot let this be a self-fulfilling prophecy that in this week or two leading up to my period, that I am just kind of like a loony bin and I'm like, well, this is my PMDD. And then I notice the things that bug me even more. Like, there is a piece of my body that, yes, does respond more heightened to certain stimulation and overstimulation. But like you said, to draw it back in and say, okay, I'm noticing it in this moment. I can't just say PMDD. Oh my gosh, I'm going to freak out for 2 weeks. But I've really learned to identify the things I'm feeling in my body. Like, I've noticed my skin feels tingly when I am really overstimulated. And yes. I never noticed that until I forced myself to dial it in. And then when I do that, I can say, I need to go cool down. I'll like go outside or I'll go turn on a fan or something like that. And that's so much more helpful than just spiraling and being like, oh, I can't believe my PMDD is acting up again. Like, yes. No, I need to go stand in front of a fan or go take a bath or whatever.
Exactly. Beautiful. And it's that tuning in. I love that. I just want to applaud that. Like, when we can stop and really tune in. And the practice of narrative medicine that I mentioned at the beginning, and when you asked me what I did and who I am, that practice is a practice of deep listening. Really deeply listening. And it's a practice that primarily is geared towards the provider who's learning to deeply listen to a patient. But I really would like to translate that practice to the patient themselves. How do we slow down and engage in deep listening with our bodies, with ourselves, so that we can make the decisions that are less impulsive and less geared towards that quick fix, because we are stopping to notice. And what I loved about the opportunity to talk with you is that this happens with our knee-jerk response to what we're surrounding ourselves with as well. It's often a need that we're suppressing with what we're buying or purchasing or crowding into our lives, as opposed to that slow down, that deep listening. And I'm not even talking, Shannon, about the big story or the big narrative. I'm talking about the little threads that help us to understand ourselves better. And that's the beauty of living a long life. It's not suppressing all the things that are happening in and to us. It's actually embracing them and living into them.
I hope that everyone listening feels encouraged that there can be this healthy combination of medicine or supplements alongside this self-awareness and these broader scope kind of things that can help us feel better, right? Like it's not one or the other. And like you said, we just have to be aware of when they're actually being helpful versus when they're suppressing or when whatever it might be. And I'm just really excited about everything you've said. Unfortunately, we are out of time, which the conversations like this, Andrea, it's really fun when they happen for me, when I'm left with many questions left over and I just feel like the conversation was so easy, and like, okay, it's a good thing that time is up because that means it was really fun to talk, but I'm also very sad because I want to talk more. But my last question here to leave everyone with is, what is one maybe health clutter habit you wish everyone would just release right now?
Yeah, I mean, I want to just add one thing to what you just said, is that earlier, that it's not an either or. It actually has to be that we do self-care in addition to everything else. So I'm somebody who's worked with people with severe chronic health challenges, and it is the both ends. So I just want to say that in terms of one clutter habit that I wish we would release, I'm going to say we are cluttering our lives with dietary theories. We are adopting the keto, the intermittent fasting, the whatever's in vogue, protein. Everybody eat more protein. And I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just saying that it is more balanced and broader for all of us. And if we slow down and figure out what works for us, we stop buying into, literally and physically, all these different things that are being fed to us. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've watched the pendulum swing many times, speaking of pendulums, between low fat, high fat, low protein, high protein, all the things. Just tune in to your body to make sure you're getting what you need in a balanced way.
Totally. Gosh, because we can get so obsessive in a certain way and it might work for a little bit, but then it's exhausting if you're not just intuitively listening to what your body needs. And it reminds me even of superfoods. Like it's like yes, avocado this week or kale this week or whatever. And yes, I'm like, avocado is awesome and kale is awesome. Like, first of all, this is not new information. We know that avocados and kale are excellent foods to eat.
Exactly.
But also, the more avocado you eat isn't going to change your life. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yes, I'm with you.
Well, Andrea, thank you again for coming on. Would you share with everyone where we can find more of your work, follow along online, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at Andrea Nakayama in all the places, LinkedIn, Instagram, and at andreanakayama.com.
Amazing. Thank you again. This was so fun.
Thank you, Shannon.
You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.